It was almost midnight when the glass tower of Harris Enterprises glowed like a jewel against the dark city. Inside, CEO Victoria Harris stood in her corner office, watching the lights of the streets below blur through her tears. That night, everything had crumbled. A deal gone wrong, investors pulling out, the media smelling blood. Her empire had collapsed in a single evening. The phone calls had stopped hours ago. No one was coming to save her. She was alone, until she heard the faint sound of a mop bucket rolling down the hallway. "Miss Harris?" The voice was deep, hesitant, carrying a tone of genuine concern she hadn't heard in years. She turned and saw him, Daniel Cole, the building's janitor. She'd seen him a few times, usually in passing, always polite, never intrusive. Tonight, he was different. His brows knit in worry, and when she tried to brush him off with a "I'm fine," he stepped closer, his voice firm yet kind. "No, you're not," he said, placing the mop aside. "You're coming with me." The words caught her off guard. People didn't tell Victoria Harris what to do, not board members, not rival CEOs, not even family. But Daniel didn't say it as an order, it was an invitation. She almost laughed at the absurdity, until she noticed the sincerity in his eyes. An hour later, she found herself in a small but warm kitchen, a far cry from the glass and steel coldness of her penthouse. Daniel's 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, was sitting at the table, sketching in a worn notebook. "Hi," Sophie said shyly, her eyes lighting up when her dad introduced Victoria as a friend. Over mugs of tea, Daniel told her his story, not to compare struggles, but to share understanding. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him to raise Sophie alone. He'd once worked as a skilled contractor, but an accident and mounting bills had forced him into night shifts as a janitor. "Life can take everything in a moment," he said, "but it doesn't have to take you." Victoria, used to boardroom battles and corporate politics, didn't know how to respond. Here was a man who had lost so much more than she had, yet he carried himself with a quiet strength that made her feel safe. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Sophie became an anchor in her freefall. He didn't treat her like the fallen CEO everyone pitied or resented. He made her help Sophie with homework, taught her how to cook simple meals, even made her laugh again. In turn, she used her skills to help him reworking his finances, helping him find a way back into his old trade. But the world hadn't forgotten her scandal. The tabloids swarmed when they learned the former high-powered CEO was spending her days in a modest neighborhood with a single dad janitor. The stories were cruel, mocking, and relentless. Victoria considered retreating into isolation again, fearing she'd drag Daniel and Sophie down with her. When she told Daniel she should stay away, he simply shook his head. "You're family now," he said. "And family doesn't walk out when things get ugly." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One night, Victoria helped Daniel prepare a proposal for a local community center renovation. She pulled strings, called in favors from the few allies she still had, and together they secured the contract. It was Daniel's first step back into the work he loved, and it gave her something she hadn't felt in months: purpose. Months later, she wasn't the CEO of Harris Enterprises anymore. She was something better: a mentor to local businesses, an advocate for small community projects, and part of a little household where love mattered more than status. Sophie's laughter filled the rooms. Daniel's quiet strength guided them both. The night she lost everything had led her here, to a life she never knew she needed. She realized that sometimes being saved doesn't mean someone fixes your problems, it means they stand beside you while you learn to face them yourself. And for anyone watching this now, remember, no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back up. You just need the courage to take the hand that's reaching for you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind you hope can be found in the most unexpected places, and sometimes, the right people enter your life exactly when you need them most. The next morning, the sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of Daniel's kitchen, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow. Victoria had stayed the night on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of laundry soap and cinnamon. She awoke to the sound of Sophie giggling as her father flipped pancakes in a battered skillet. For a moment, she just sat there, watching a man in a faded t-shirt and a little girl with messy hair, sharing an ordinary morning. It was so far from the world she'd known, and somehow, she didn't want to leave. Morning, Daniel said with that calm, easy smile of his. "Coffee's on the counter. Sophie saved you the biggest pancake." "Only because I dropped the first one," Sophie added proudly. Victoria laughed, really laughed, and it felt like the first genuine one in weeks. She took a seat, sipping the coffee and realizing something strange. For years, her mornings had been filled with frantic phone calls, meetings, and crisis control. But here, there was peace. As days turned into weeks, she found herself coming back again and again. Sometimes she'd bring groceries, other times she'd help Sophie with a school project. She even learned how to change a leaky faucet under Daniel's guidance, though she did manage to flood the sink in the process. But outside their little bubble, her reputation was still battered. Former colleagues whispered, journalists lurked, and online articles painted her as a cautionary tale. One afternoon, she got a call from an old investor offering her a way back into the corporate world, but it came with a catch.